welcome back into another edition of Prime Sports World, and a very happy Wednesday from everybody here at Prime Sports World. Hope you all are having a fantastic week as we are getting into hump day and we are getting into the nitty gritty when it comes to fantasy football. Week number 18 for many leagues. You guys either just about to start your playoffs or your playoffs are already underway. Sad news, I only have one fantasy team that's still relevant. It's the league that I'm in with Mr. Dan Kenny, league that I've been in a long time. I'm in the semifinals in that league. I'm down by 6 points. Thankfully, I had Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase on Monday night, so I was able to dig back out of that hole a little bit. But the league that I personally run, the Greatest People's League, I got eliminated on Monday. I needed 25 points by T. Higgins in order to keep my fantasy football season alive. That did not happen. So unfortunately, sometimes that happens. Man, you know what sucks about my league, my Greatest People League? I have to go on a little mini rant here. I'm the third highest scoring team in fantasy right now in that league. I'm 6-8. Like I've lost matchups. I've lost 5 matchups to the highest scoring team in the league that week 5 times. Like I scored over 130 points in a game and lost 140 once and lost. I'm the third highest. It's just tough. But anyways, on more Prime Sports World, I'm going to give you my week 15 fantasy football rankings so you can get your lineup ready to go. Thank you very much for joining us. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast as we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and on the Huddle Sports Network. You can catch Huddle Sports Network on your Roku devices. And if you have any questions about your fantasy football team, drop them down in the comment section. I will answer any questions as they come in through the show. I always love a little bit of fan interaction as we get through these shows. But let's get into it. Let's start with my quarterbacks. And my number 1 quarterback is Lamar Jackson, returning off that bye, going up against a bad Giants team. Number 2, Joe Burrow. As we talk about a lot on Prime Sports World on Mondays and Tuesdays, Joe Burrow would be the MVP, and it wouldn't be close if the Bengals had a winning record. He has just been the only source of real offense for the Bengals, and their defense has been so porous that he's had to put up big numbers. 3, Josh Allen coming off throwing those 6 touchdown passes. But I do think the Lions present an interesting debate or interesting combat. So I think that'll be Josh Allen is number 3, but if you're expecting him to have 50 plus fantasy points again this week, you may be disappointed. Number 4, I got Sam Darnold coming off that virtuoso performance against the Atlanta Falcons. I expect him to have a sort of very similar game going up against my Chicago Bears on Monday Night Football. That game's at home, and the Bears just kind of look like a defeated group. So I think Sam Darnold's going to have a good game there. Number 5, Jay Daniels of the Washington Commanders coming off his bye as well, going up against the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints defense hasn't been all that good. 6, Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that's a tough matchup for Jalen Hurts, even though I did pick them to win the game, or I didn't. I picked the Steelers actually to win the game yesterday on the show. But I think Jalen Hurts has a rocky game there. 7, Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. Kind of a bounce back game for him as he goes against the New England Patriots. Bo Nix in my top 10. Denver Broncos should have a good matchup there in the Peyton Manning Bowl going up against the Indianapolis Colts. 9, Tua Tagovailoa, and 10, Justin Herbert rounded out my top 10 as he looks to have a good matchup there against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Both of those teams playing for their playoff lives. And then my outside looking in, I got Baker Mayfield in that same matchup with Justin Herbert. Jared Goff going up against the Buffalo Bills. And then I can't leave out Patrick Mahomes the second. He's going up. He has a matchup going up against the Cleveland Browns. That defense has been awfully porous this season. Then my sneaky daily, Bryce Young at 5,300 going up against the Dallas Cowboys. You've seen what the defense of the Dallas looks like right now, and I've liked what I've seen out of Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers over the last month or so, a month and a half. So I'm rolling the dice with Bryce Young at 5,300. This is DraftKings money, by the way, not FanDuel. Anyways, moving on from your quarterbacks, let's talk about them rock toters. Let's talk about them running backs. And fresh off his bye week, I got Derrick Henry at number 1 going up against the New York Football Giants. Number 2, Joe Mixon, also fresh off his bye, going up against the sorry, I don't remember Houston's playing right now. I gotta look that up. Just give me a second. Sorry. The Miami Dolphins. Sorry, they're going up against the Miami Dolphins. I like that matchup for Joe Mixon, especially since I think they're going to want to shorten the game. I think they're going to want to keep the ball out of Tua Tagovailoa's hands. So look for that to be a thing. Number 3, Saquon Barkley. Yeah, it might be a little bit lower, but I think the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is going to focus on. We're not letting Saquon Barkley beat us. He's still in my top 3, but I think it could be a rough day at the office for Saquon Barkley. So I would temper my expectations just a little bit. 4, Kyron Williams in the Los Angeles Rams. He's going into a pretty nice matchup in a game where they have to continue to win if they want to stay relevant. That game's tomorrow night against the San Francisco 49ers. So look for Kyron Williams, a pretty solid game there. And then from there, I got Josh Jacobs at number 5 going up against the Seattle Seahawks. 6, Alvin Kamara. He seems to be a major focal point in that offense. Now that Taysom Hill's out of the picture and the wide receiving core is pretty banged up. 7, Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins. He's just been a PPR beast. He hasn't been that good actually running the actual football, but PPR league and catching the football in the backfield, he's been excellent. 8, Bijan Robinson. 9, Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. And James Cook at my top 10. I think he bounces back from which was a pretty porous performance last week against the Los Angeles Rams. But game flow dictated that they didn't need to run. They couldn't run the football because they needed to come back. They were down 17 at one point in that game. James Cook became kind of an afterthought in that Buffalo offense. I do not think that'll be the case this week going up against Detroit. And then from there, I got my outside looking. I got Rico Dowell coming off back-to-back 100-yard performance for the Dallas Cowboys. I think that's a pretty good matchup going up against Carolina. 2, Najee Harris. As we've seen from this Pittsburgh Steelers team, they seem to go when the Najee Harris goes, and I think he's going to want to go in this game. 3, Chuba Hubbard. The Chuba missile crisis, as Chris Berman coined last couple weeks in the fastest 2 minutes, fastest 3 minutes, I think it is on ESPN. But yeah, going up against the Dallas Cowboys, we kind of saw what Chase Brown did against this defense. I think you're going to have a similar matchup there. As in what we talked about with Chuba Hubbard. And then my sneaky daily, I got Tank Bigsby at 5,100. It's become the number 1 running back there for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then Kendre Miller, who got the rushing touchdown for the New Orleans Saints. He's somebody that they were really, really high on last season coming out of college. Spent a lot of time on IR last year. Didn't really get to, but he's been a focal point of that offense the last couple weeks at 4,500. From the running backs, from those rock toters to them pass catchers, let's talk wide receiver. Number 1 is no doubt Jamar Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals. He may win the Triple Crown this season, and he may win Offensive Player of the Year with one of the worst teams ever win a player to win Offensive Player of the Year. Jamar Chase has been just dynamic so far this season. And number 2, CeeDee Lamb. I know he's dealing with a whole bunch of injuries, including a shoulder injury, but I think he should have a pretty good game against the Carolina Panthers. That is not a great defense. 3, Mike Evans going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. This offense has been different since Mike Evans has returned to the lineup. 4, Terry Scary McLaurin coming off that bye week going up against New Orleans. No real secondary that you're kind of scared of when it comes to the New Orleans Saints. 5, Tyreek Hill going up probably against Derek Stingley, Jr. of the Houston Texans. But I still think Tyreek Hill, as long as he can get in the end zone, I think he's gotten in the end zone for back-to-back weeks. That's still pretty favorable. And then Justin Jefferson, you see him there at 6. Jalen Johnson usually does a pretty good job against Justin Jefferson. He's still in my top 10, but I got him a little bit lower than when I normally have Justin Jefferson rated. But Jalen Johnson does a pretty serviceable job against Justin Jefferson whenever these two guys meet. I would temper my expectations if you're a Justin Jefferson owner as well. 7, Nico Collins going up against Jalen Ramsey in that matchup against the Miami Dolphins. 8, A.J. Brown. I think that they're going to have – I think if you're Pittsburgh, you're going to force the Philadelphia Eagles to beat you through the air. A.J. Brown is the guy they're going to turn to. And then the sun god, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I just think that, Detroit, I think, they're going to put up points against Buffalo. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I know he's coming off a pretty mediocre game in the world of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Against the Green Bay Packers, but I think he'll bounce back against Buffalo. And then the guy who's just been on a tear the last month or so, Puka Nacua, has become a PPR monster, become a touchdown machine, catching really difficult contested catches from the arm of Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford probably a guy who should be in my top 10 too when it comes to the quarterback position, but there's just so many options there. But yeah, 10 or 10, Puka Nacua. And then my outside looking in, I got Cortland Sutton of the Denver Broncos. I think I like that in the Peyton Manning Bowl. The secondary of Indy doesn't scare me whatsoever. Drake London and the Atlanta Falcons going into Las Vegas to try to redeem themselves after the last 3 weeks have been abysmal for the Atlanta Falcons. And number 3, DJ Moore for my Chicago Bears. I still think that Minnesota Vikings team Bears are going to put up some points against Minnesota. They did a couple weeks ago, so look for them to have a good game for DJ Moore, especially since the target share seems to be there for DJ Moore. And then my sneaky and daily also in DraftKings, Alec Pierce at 4,800. Last time we saw him on the football field with the Indianapolis Colts, was catching a game-winning touchdown. And I know he's not going up against the defenses as bad as the Patriots defense was a couple weeks ago. But I still think Alec Pierce is going to be a focal point of the offense. Him and Anthony Richardson seem to have a pretty solid rapport. And then Michael Wilson at 4,400. The Arizona Cardinals, he caught the first touchdown in the game for them last week against the Seattle Seahawks. Going up against a much more team user-friendly matchup for Michael Wilson at 4,400. I would roll the dice on both of those two guys. If you're trying to spend money elsewhere, I think you can spend some decent money at these two guys and spend money elsewhere other than the wide receiver position. From there, we're going to talk about them bulkier pass catchers, and obviously number 1 and number 2 is the new guard at tight end. Number 1, Brock freaking Bowers, and I will never make the mistake of keeping Brock Bowers outside of my top 10, because last time I did that, I got a whole message from Izzy, all upset that I didn't have Brock Bowers in my top 10. So I will not make that mistake again, I promise, Izzy. Obviously, he had some family stuff going on and some work stuff going on, so he couldn't join me here on this fantasy football podcast, Joe. Unfortunate, but he'll be back next week, and I'll be back next week as well, as I was out either last week or the week before. Number 2, Trey McBride of the Arizona Cardinals. And they got 4. The next 4 guys are kind of the old guard: Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, David Njoku. They're just your old, reliable fantasy football tight ends. You start those guys; they probably give you 10 points guaranteed. Those are guys I would roll the dice on. Jonnu Smith was extremely disappointing up until overtime. Caught all 3 of his passes from Tua Tagovailoa during overtime, including the game-sealing touchdown where Aaron Rodgers never got to touch the football again in that game. But Jonnu Smith has been a big part of that Miami Dolphins offense. Look for that to continue against the Houston Texans. 8K Dot, and I know his usage hasn't been as robust as it was when Mike Evans was out, but he's still a pretty focal point of that offense. He's probably still, even with Jalen McLaughlin coming back as a member of that team, or Jalen McMillan, sorry. I still like K Dot as a top 10 tight end. Number 9, Evan Ingram. The target share is just there for him going up against Jacksonville Jaguars, going up against the New York Jets. Then 10, Sam Laporta has got 3 touchdowns in 2 weeks, including that touchdown against Green Bay, and then 2 against my Chicago Bears in the game that the Bears should have absolutely won. But yeah, he's just his people were very concerned about his usage earlier in the season, but I think it's taken a swing in the other direction. I think he's going to become a valuable tight end down the stretch. Like if you were able to trade for Sam Laporta when he was way, way down, I think you're probably reaping the benefits of that decision now. And then from there, I got my outside looking in. I got Pat Freiermuth of the Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, which I think could be a low-scoring affair. But Pat Freiermuth, I think he scored a touchdown the last 2 weeks in a row. Him and Russell Wilson seem to have a really solid rapport as those two guys continue to grow and develop as a unit. And then TJ Hawkinson of the Minnesota Vikings and Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers. He's almost become the most consistent pass catcher on that team over the last few weeks. So Tucker Kraft is a guy I like. I probably have him way too low, to be totally honest with you. But this season, tight end has been kind of loaded so far this year. Like it's become a position where there are like a lot of there are years where there's like 5 tight ends that you feel really comfortable about starting every single week. And everybody else is kind of like an absolute dice roll. And you never really know what you're going to get out of those guys. But I think when you look at my tight end rankings, I mean, these have been the consistent guys this season. They have given you plus top 10 performances for majority of the year. And you feel comfortable starting any of these 13 guys that I have listed in my top 10 and then my outside looking in. And then my sneaky daily on DraftKings is Tommy Tremble at 3,000. I just like him. He got a touchdown with Carolina last week. I think him and Bryce Young seem to have a solid rapport. And ever since he came back from that neck injury, thank God that was nothing serious. He's been really good on the football field. So 3,000 for Tommy Tremble. I think that's a dice roll I would make if I'm playing somebody in daily on DraftKings. And then swinging over to the other side of the football, we got them defensive rankings. Let's start first with my top 5. We got the Baltimore Ravens going up against whatever's left of the New York Football Giants. The Denver Broncos taking on Anthony Richardson, who's prone to give you one, and the Indianapolis Colts. The Washington Commanders, who are going up against, I'm not sure who the quarterback's going to be for the Washington Commanders. It's probably going to be Spencer Rattler, or maybe it'll be the Nooch, Ben DiNucci. Also losing my voice. I don't know if you can pick up on that during the show or not. My voice is absolutely taking a hit this week, dealing with a really bad cold, and my voice is not having a good time. But yeah, going up against the New Orleans Saints, who I have a big unknowns at the quarterback position. Probably won't be Derek Carr. It could be Jake Hayner, actually, now that I think about it. And then Minnesota Vikings going up against Caleb Williams and my Chicago Bears. This offense just looked inept at times during this season, especially in the first half of games. And they seem to try to claw their way back. By then, it's already too late. Minnesota has been solid on defense, and I think they're going to put some serious pressure under Caleb Williams in that offensive line for the Chicago Bears. And then the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the Cleveland Browns and Jameis Winston. As we've seen, Jameis Winston has been prone to throwing picks. So I think he's a pretty solid, safe role with the Chiefs there. And then the Atlanta Falcons going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm not sure who their quarterback's going to be. I think it might be Desmond Ridder, and he may be looking for their revenge dagger. Shout out to Brandon Perna from That Good Sports with that terminology there. But, the Atlanta Falcons, I think they're going to shut down that Las Vegas Raiders the offense, especially in a game that is essentially a must-win for Atlanta. 2 Arizona Cardinals going up against Drake May and the New England Patriots. I know they're coming off a bye, but I think Arizona's going to be hungry. They know they have to win this game to even keep their season remotely alive, even a little bit. And then my last guy on my outside looking in also happens to be a sneaky and daily on DraftKings at 3,000 is the New York Jets going up against Mac Jones and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And yeah, maybe you haven't liked what you've seen out of the Jets, but the defense has been solid at times. And I think, going up against a bad Jacksonville Jaguars team, I think they're going to get after the quarterback. I think they're going to play hard. I think they're going to get some sacks. I think they're going to make mistakes out of Mac Jones, who they do know pretty well because they played against him in division last 2 years before this season. So my Jets are my sneaky and daily, and they are my final team when it comes to my outside looking in. But yeah, that's been my Week 15 fantasy football rankings presented by Prime Sports World. Thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate the sport here at Prime Sports World. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. My name is David On Point Huffman, and I will be back here next week. I do believe Izzy is planning on running College Football Showdown tomorrow. No, Friday, as he looks ahead into the bowl games, and now that the CBF playoff has been announced and the Heisman Finals has also been announced. So I'm pretty sure he's planning to run that show on Friday. This show is live now. It'll also be live on your Roku devices on the Huddle Sports Network. So don't miss any of that content. So thank you very much for joining us. Of course, obviously, I'm David Huffman. We'll be back here next week breaking down all the action for week number 15. Y'all have a good night and stay safe out there and have a fantastic hump day. And before we get up out of here, I just want to send my condolences to the family and friends. Meteorologist Bob Nunley. If you do not know who Bob Nunley is a meteorologist that I worked with for 3 years while I was a producer in Columbus, Ohio. He was really just a kind man, movie knowledge, loved animals, loved pets, especially Dachshund hounds. It's a sad loss. I know he stepped away from the station a little bit after I left about 3 years ago or so. It's just, sad to hear of his passing. He was a young man, 68 years old, had a lot of life to live. So my thoughts and prayers out to the family and friends of Bob Nunley. You have my sympathy and you have my thoughts and my prayers. Bob Nunley was a stand-up guy in a sit-down world, and the world is going to miss his kind face. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you very much for listening to me ramble about fantasy football for about 20 minutes. I do appreciate the support. Y'all have a good night and stay safe. Peace out.
Welcome to the Huddle Sports Network, where we're breaking boundaries and redefining podcasting. Broadcasting live on 6 different platforms, we're bringing you the latest in sports like never before. Imagine tuning into real-time discussions, expert analyses, and fan interactions all at your fingertips. Each platform offers a unique experience, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch. We're not just sharing stories, we're creating a community of passionate sports enthusiasts. Join us as we dive deep into the evolution of podcasting. where every episode is a chance to engage, debate, and celebrate the world of sports. This is where your voice matters and the game never stops. Welcome to the Huddle Sports Network, where we're breaking boundaries and redefining podcasting. Broadcasting live on 6 different platforms, we're bringing you the latest in sports like never before, where sports passion meets podcasting brilliance. I'm Mike, the Bear fan, and alongside Bill, the Packer fan, and our buddy Ken Catalone, we're bringing you an incredible lineup of 38 diverse podcasters. Each one brings their unique flavor to the table, covering everything from game analysis to behind-the-scenes stories. Imagine diving deep into the minds of experts who live and breathe football, sharing